Sabrina. Thanks for coming on the show.
Nice to be here.
What is a core belief?
A core belief is kind of that inner voice that really drives everything that you do. And so, for a lot of people, that core belief is often feeling not good enough, not important, not valued. The other end of that, a healthier core belief, is feeling more good enough, important, and valued. Nobody's core belief is 100% one or the other. There's often a bit of a combination, but we see people who are struggling, who have anxiety, who have anger, who feel disconnected, who feel lonely, just really not really happy and content in their life. Often that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, is more significant.
Yeah, I think so. If I look back, I think my core belief would have been not good enough, and the other one, I've always put it as as feeling like a burden. But I like your terminology of I think that would sit into the not valued bucket, I guess. So how
For
does
sure.
one, yeah? So how does one develop these beliefs?
You know, they develop over, obvious reasons where you're growing up with a lot of anger and violence and abuse, but it's also a lot of just the more subtle things as
But
well, where you
hold
just
on,
feel kind of.
how is that obvious though? Like, so if you grow up in violence or abuse, how is that obvious that it turns into a belief of not being good enough? I get
Well,
that it
if you
would develop anger and frustration, and I think I had a lot of anger at the world, but yeah, how does that turn into actually not being good enough?
well, you didn't know how to keep the peace in your home. Not that it was your responsibility, but as kids, we're very egocentric. Our brain is built around us. I've had clients, young kids, say to me, my parents got divorced because I didn't make the bed. And so we take things on very personally. So for a child to feel like I wasn't good enough as a child to keep the peace. My dad kept getting angry because I wasn't good enough. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. My mom was drinking all the time because I didn't do this. She didn't love me enough. Whatever it might be, we end up replaying those kind of scenarios in our head over and over and over and end up reinforcing that kind of core belief over a lifetime. It's not usually one event. It's a combination of a whole bunch of things repeating in various ways over and over and over again.
Okay,
Being
sorry,
picked on it.
yep. Sorry, I interrupted. I'll let you keep going.
No, it can be, other more, like I said, a bit more subtle things too, right? Like I didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher the right way. And so my mom has to come in and do it a different way for me. I get left out of a birthday party that my other friends are going to. So even those other pieces that are a bit more subtle, they still kind of feed that not good enough, right? I didn't do a good enough job. I'm not a good enough friend. I'm being kind of left behind. So even with those more subtle pieces, we still see that core belief developing.
Okay, so once we've developed that core belief, how does that affect our life?
Our core belief kind of drives everything that we do. We're constantly trying to prove to ourselves that what we believe about ourselves is true. So if my core belief is not good enough, not valued, like you were saying, then I'm going to be drawn to people, experiences, my own perceptions are going to reinforce and support that core belief. So rather than saying, wow, I did this really well, it's going to be, oh, I could have done this a bit differently. We don't recognize the positives. We don't accept compliments. We just blow them off or brush them aside or
Yeah.
justify out of them. That doesn't fit
Hmm.
with my core belief. But someone gives me a dig or makes a bit of a put down, I'm going to play that over and over and over in my head because it reinforces and supports that core belief.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. I can't accept confident compliments, and I often see them internally as people taking pity on me, right? So
Right.
if someone
Well,
says
that feeds,
something nice, it they must just feel sorry for me.
right. Which feeds that core belief, right? Not good
So
enough. They feel sorry for me. They pity me.
yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rather than, wow, I did a great job. Someone appreciates me. Someone values me. Mm, that
yeah,
doesn't fit.
Yeah, so I think I developed mine from, I guess, a lack of connection growing up. My parents were dealing with their own trauma and stuff like that, so I did feel like a lack of connection within my household, but then also a lack of connection in my school. Um, and how that showed up for me needing to prove myself, right? Yeah, it was a long journey of being obsessed with both success and then as I would hit those successes, still not being happy, right? And it didn't solve the problem. And then on the other side, it was also a lot of alcoholism and stuff like that. I mean, how does a belief of not good enough usually show up? Is there a bunch of different ways, or?
Yeah, it can show up. So I think a really important piece that is very much connected with that core belief is suppression of emotions. We are often taught right from the get-go, don't feel your emotions, just push them down. And that's what we were taught by our parents, because that's what our parents were taught, was to push down and suppress their emotions. So now we've got all these emotions building and building. And if I'm kind of full up with emotions, I don't feel like I can take on any more. I'm going to be a bit more anger. I'm going to have less patience. I'm going to be more irritable, more grumpy. I'm going to need to push things away because I don't have the capacity to anymore. Well, that all again reinforces that core belief, not good enough, not valued. So they all kind of feed into each other. As I am holding in more and more and more emotion, I need bigger coping strategies to push them down. But I'm gravitating to the more unhealthy use of coping strategies because that will reinforce that core belief. Healthy coping strategies don't reinforce that. So I'm drawn more to alcohol because when I drink, I numb everything. I don't have to worry about anything. When I'm drinking, I don't have to feel anything. But then the next day, I'm hungover. I feel like garbage. I spent money I didn't have. I said things I shouldn't have said. I embarrassed myself. I broke promises to myself or to others, ultimately reinforcing that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, feeling more emotions like shame, regret, defeated, defensive, lonely, powerless, disconnected. We just add more emotion to it. So now it becomes even more significant. So now I need to drink more to numb because I got more going on. And so that pattern continues.
It turns into this self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, I've often said that about my drinking. Like it started as a way of coping with I guess anxiety, but then the behaviors that stem from drinking give you more evidence or reasons not to like yourself, and it turns into this self-fulfilling prophecy. You said as we were younger, we're taught to suppress emotions. Now, nobody actively said to me, "You're not allowed to show emotion." So how are we taught to suppress emotions? Because I can inherently feel it. Like I can feel, I guess, a level of embarrassment or a level of, I don't know, not being allowed to express emotions. But I don't know how that was actually instilled in me.
And so often it can be things like, the you want something to cry about, I'll give you something to cry about. Those kind of comments reinforce and suppress emotion. But we often just try to fix the problem, right? Okay. So as a parent, if I don't like to feel my emotion, and now my child has ripped their favorite shirt and they're crying, well, now that creates emotion in me because my child's upset, but I don't know how to deal with my emotion. So I need to shut my child off. Oh, it's no big deal. We'll get your shirt fixed. We can get you another one. You have one just like it in the closet. It's okay. Don't worry about it. We're trying to shut them off when really what we should be saying is, yeah, that was your favorite shirt. That's too bad that it ripped. What are you feeling about it? Let them I feel sad. I feel disappointed. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. Yep, makes sense. Let the emotion out, move on. Then you problem solve. Okay, we can get you a new shirt or you have another one like it, or we can see if we can mend it, whatever it might be. But we often jump to the problem solving as a way of suppressing and pushing down that emotion. Okay. And we do it so almost instinctively because we've been doing it for so many generations. Often we aren't even aware we're doing it.
So So, on a practical sense, so like, let's say last night, my daughter was quite upset. Somebody had exited her life, and she's quite young, 9, and she was extremely emotional about it, right? And it's easy as a parent to go into, I'm too busy to deal with this. But I mean, if we want to, I mean, what's the most healthy way to deal with that and help her through that situation without developing negative core beliefs?
Right. So, like you said, it's easy to just, be too busy and not be able to deal with it. Well, not really. That's what you do to avoid feeling your emotions when your daughter's upset and you don't know what to deal with it. I'm busy over here. I don't have to deal with it. Right. Hopefully, by the time I get back in the house, she's feeling better and I don't even have to worry about it. That's about our own emotions. So, the number one thing you have to do as a parent is you have to get better at feeling your emotions. I tell my clients that on a daily basis. If you have kids, the number one thing you can do as a parent is heal yourself. Because the more I'm okay to feel my emotions, the more I'm okay to sit with my child who's struggling with their emotions. I don't need to make it about me. I can just sit and let her feel her emotions. So, I'd say, well, tell me what happened. And so she tells you about how her friend, moved away or whatever it might be and is no longer there. Well, how do you feel? Well, lonely, sad, scared, great. And what are you thinking about now? I mean, what does it look like moving forward with one of your friends who's no longer there? That's scary too. So there's the whole thought around her leaving, but then there's another thought of, now what? No, what if no one else likes me? What if I don't have any other friends? Right? What if no one else chooses me? What if I'm not good enough? But she needs to talk about those kind of things and get it out. So even if she says, well, what if now nobody likes me? What if I don't have a close friend in school? What if I'm not good enough for everyone else? You just say, oh, how does that feel? Well, I feel sad. I feel scared. I feel lonely. Oh, you let her get it all out and talk about it. You say, yeah, that makes sense. I can understand how you would be feeling that. So let's talk about now she's got the emotion out. You'll see the emotion just comes down. She's feeling more calm. There's not a bunch of tears. She's just more settled. And then you can talk about, okay, so let's talk about what we can do moving forward. And I don't know, maybe she has a whole bunch of other friends and you can even say, do you think it's even realistic that you might not have any other friends? Because you're always playing with Sally and, Sherry and Tommy and, these other kids as well. Is there one there that would be a good friend? If she is someone that is a bit more quiet, has one really good friend, then you talk to her about how do you build new friends? What do you think you did that made you a good friend for your friend? What did you like about your friend that made her a good friend? How do you work on building a new friendship? And you help her talk about that. And then you check in with her every couple of days. How did it go? Did you talk to anyone? Did you smile at someone a bit differently? Did you, put yourself out there to try to create a bit of a relationship? If she says yes, ooh, how did that feel? If she says no, how did that feel? Why do you think you didn't? There's an emotion there that's stopping that. Usually fear of rejection, right? Feeling like you don't belong. Helping her talk through and sort through those emotions is really, really important and is ultimately building and reinforcing the core belief, good enough, important, and valued. She's learning she does have value. She's learning how to have a voice, how to solve a problem, how to connect with her dad. These are all positive things that are going to build and develop the core belief, good enough, important, and valued.
So let me know if I've got this right. It's about processing and accepting the emotions, right? Working through them rather than avoiding. So avoidance is the issue here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
Deal with the emotions, but then problem solve. Still need to problem solve, but you need to help her get some tools, right? So she has some problem solving skills, but you got to deal with the emotions first. Often, if we just jump to the problem solving, we're doing that as a way of suppressing and avoiding those emotions.
Okay. So how or why did we get to this point where we all suppress emotions? I mean, there must be some benefit from an evolution standpoint or something. How did we get here?
Generation before generation before generation, this has been a long-standing issue for many, many years. If I go back to, my grandparents' stage, there wasn't really a lot of time for emotion. They had to figure out how to get food on their table. They had 8, 10, 12 kids they had to feed. They had a lot going on just to survive. Whereas now we have a lot more, freedoms in our life because we have a lot of things in place. We have electricity, we have running water, we have, transportation. We have all these things that are in place where we're not just constantly in survival mode. But when you're constantly in that survival mode, emotion is kind of one of the last things on the list, right? And I think we've learned in our society over years, just push it down, push it down, push it down. And so it's just passed on. Your parents taught you to suppress emotions, likely because their parents taught them to suppress emotions. And we've been doing it for so long, our entire lives. A lot of the times we're not even aware we're doing it. So if I'm not aware, how do I do anything different?
Interesting. Yeah, so it was a long journey for me, going from realizing that I have this core belief of not being good enough to solving it. And there was a big fear for me around solving it. My fear was if I solve the not good enough problem, I'll lose all my productivity. I'll lose my edge, right? And my psychologist said that's not true. And my business coach said that, yeah, that probably is true. And in a lot of ways, they were both right. I think I have lost my edge in business. And it's because I'm not obsessed over proving myself to the world anymore. I think it just kind of changed my value system. And I value external gratification a lot less. Is this a kind of a common thing that you see through your work?
Yeah, it needs to be about balance. I think as soon as we're doing something to try to prove we are enough, we don't really believe we're enough. So like you say, no matter what you do, it's never enough, never enough. You get to that goal, then you got to meet the next one. Then you got to meet the next one. You got to meet the next one. Well, yeah, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You're running on a treadmill, not really getting anywhere, right? When you have more of that belief within yourself, you set a goal, you reach it, you celebrate it. You appreciate it, you value it. And then maybe you think about what you want to do if you want to move forward, or maybe you just want to stay where you are. But that's not coming from a place of proving anything. That's coming from a place of appreciating and valuing what you've done to get to that point. So it does look different. Still want to, I think as humans, we want to be productive. It's an important part of us functioning. But as soon as anything is to the extreme, it often becomes more of an unhealthy coping strategy. When I talk to my clients about coping strategies and, healthy and unhealthy. Truth of the matter is, vast majority of coping strategies aren't healthy or unhealthy. It's how we choose to use them that makes them healthy or unhealthy. So often if we're using them to the extreme, or if we're using them to suppress emotions, or if we're using them to try to prove we are enough, important, and valued, if they cause disconnect, they're going to be more of an unhealthy coping strategy. So we look at, video games. I hear it all the time. Oh, video games are so unhealthy. Well, yeah, if, I'm locking myself in my bedroom for 8 hours a day and I'm raging at my TV, it's probably an unhealthy coping strategy. But if I'm playing video games for a few hours a week with people all over the world that I've met with and kept with connections, and we can talk and visit, that's probably a healthy coping strategy. Reading. People often, reading's a really healthy coping strategy. Well, not if I'm reading until 3 o'clock in the morning and late for work, and I prefer the life of the characters in my books to my own reality, then it's not a healthy coping strategy. So, a video game and book, they're objects. They don't have the capacity to be healthy or unhealthy. What makes them healthy or unhealthy is how we're using them.
So could you say it's obsession? I mean, like, let's say, so for me, it was obsession and addiction, right? So I had this feeling of when my business gets to the next level, then everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to fall into place and I'll be happy. And then you hit that level and nothing changes. So you go, oh, it must be the next level, and then it must be the next level. And then I got myself into a spiral where I'm working, 80 to 100 hours a week. I was barely home. My relationship with my family suffering. I started having panic attacks, and I just realized continuing on this treadmill is not going to get me anywhere, right? I need to take a different approach to try to be happy. Because that was my goal, right? The goal was to be happy, but then my obsession with, I guess, wealth creation was doing the exact opposite. It was actually destroying my life. So could you say it's obsession? Is that something we should be looking out for?
Yeah, definitely. Anything used to an extreme often becomes more of an unhealthy coping strategy. So whether it's an obsession, whether it's an addiction, if you're now doing it a whole bunch, it's probably not really a healthy coping strategy. So it's finding that balance in the middle. That's really important. And, I think a lot of people, if I have enough money, then I'll be good enough. If I do this job, then I'll do this. If I create this, then I'll do this. Bottom line, as long as you're looking out here, you're never going to find it. So when you start looking in here, you've got to fill that void within yourself. There's nothing out here that is going to make you feel good enough, important, and valued. You have to fill that within yourself. But so many people look outward. If I do this, then. No, it's got to come from within.
Yeah, that resonates. So how do we look in? How do we make that switch, right? Like, see, let's say there's somebody that's currently listening and they're not happy, right? They're working like crazy. They're drinking too much. They're playing games all the time. They're really struggling. They feel a level of tense or a level of anxiety, and they don't know how to turn it around. Where do they start?
Right. And I think what a lot of people do is kind of like that. What's the switch, right? What do I need to do to turn this around? There is nothing you can do to turn it around instantly. This isn't a switch. This is more like a dimmer light where you have to slowly make these changes, right? If you try to make a drastic change, it's too much. It's too overwhelming. You're going to end up falling back. What I always tell my clients is we want evolution, not revolution. Small, gradual changes over a significant period of time is much more sustainable. So how do we even first figure out how to make those changes? We have to become aware. If I'm not aware what I'm doing is having a negative impact, I don't even know I need to do anything different. So why would I? Right? So becoming more aware of, oh, that fed that core belief, not good enough. And so even just starting that with those thoughts, how often do I have those thoughts where I'm reinforcing and feeding not good enough, not important, not valued? Then once you start becoming aware of how often, then you can start challenging those thoughts and say, okay, no, I don't need that thought. How can I reframe this so I can start to feed and develop and support that core belief, good enough, important, and valued? And the first while you do it, it feels weird and awkward and uncomfortable. It's like accepting a compliment. You just kind of go, thank you. Ooh, but you can feel it in your gut, like just churning because that doesn't fit. But the better you get at doing that, you do that 5, 10, 15 times, it now becomes a little bit more comfortable to accept a compliment. Do it 100 times, it's kind of old hat. You don't have to worry about it. So a big step is awareness, but then we have to challenge a little bit at a time, and we need to practice before we take that next step.
Yeah, that theory you were saying about just little changes at a time rather than a flick of a switch, I mean, that really fits in any aspect of your life. Like, I run marathons. If you don't run and you just go, I'm going to run a marathon, you are going to break and you're going to hate it and you're never going to go again, right? It's the same in business. If I go in and tell my team, okay, everything's changing today, I'm going to have mutiny on my hand. Everything's going to fall over, right? So same with diet. You need to look at tiny little changes that you can consistently implement over long periods of time. That's where real change happens. So awareness. Sure. How do we become aware? What should I be doing? Do I sit there or do I write in my diary every time I have a certain thought? Can we have some tips or tricks about how we become more aware about what our core belief actually is?
Right. So a big step that we have to do is step out of those unconscious cycles of thinking that we do over and over and over again. Like you just picked up your coffee and had a drink. You didn't stop and think, okay, I'm going to extend my hand and put my fingers. So many of our thoughts are just unconscious. We're not even aware. If that core belief has been with you for decades, you're not even aware of how much it's there. So the first step we want to do is try to step out of that unconscious thinking and become more aware of our thinking. We need to think about what we're thinking about and try to catch ourselves. We can't do that all the time. But if you do that for a minute or two every second day for a couple weeks, you'll start to recognize and see a bit of a pattern. Writing is a really good way of tapping more into that unconscious. When we write, we often bring out stuff that is more logged deeper in our unconscious. So writing is really good, but then leaving it for a couple hours, a couple days, then going back and reading it can often also be really insightful, where all of a sudden you'll read and you'll be like, oh, I didn't even know that was what was going on. Now you can start to become more aware of what those thoughts are for sure. And then you challenge them.
Yeah, I used to do that. I used to journal, and I used to just sit there and stream of consciousness. And you come back and read it and you go, oh my God, what was going on that day? And you're so unaware of kind of your stream of consciousness on a regular basis. I mean, the big one for me, and I don't know whether you're an advocate for this, is meditation, is mindfulness. That's what's helped me get out of my head, or kind of understand that there's just always thoughts just arising that you're actually not aware of, and they're controlling your emotional state.
Right. And, I think that's a part of when I talk about think about what you're thinking about, part of that, it can be a meditation where you're really just sitting still and being aware of the thoughts. But, just trying to be more aware of where that thought is coming up, taking some time, doing some breathing, bringing that brain and just slowing it down can help you become more aware of what those thoughts are as well. You mentioned anxiety. Anxiety is often a very fast brain. Your brain is just going faster and faster and faster. And generally what we do as human beings is we try to keep up with our brain, when really what we need to do is become more aware of, oh, my brain's going really fast, so I need to do something to bring it back down. I'm going to take 5 deep breaths and, count backwards from 100 or whatever it is, and slow that brain down. Becoming aware that we can do that helps manage that. And meditation can be a really useful tool in helping just slow those thoughts down, because you're wanting to be more conscious and aware of what those thoughts are. So
are we basically trying to replace the traditional coping mechanisms? Because, so let's say, for me, I mean, I've got quite a high stress work environment, and I would come home and my brain races, right? And I'm very restless, agitated. And when I got sober, it became fairly apparent fairly quickly that a lot of my drinking was trying to numb that extreme level of restlessness. So are we trying to find another way to deal with that restlessness, right? Are we swapping out bad coping mechanisms for good coping mechanisms? And I guess what makes those bad ones bad and what makes the good ones good?
So it's kind of like we're talking about those healthy versus unhealthy, right? Often, if I'm using it to suppress emotions, to avoid emotions, I'm using it more to the extreme, it's damaging my relationships. It's going to be more of an unhealthy coping strategy. But I'm using it for a reason, because it also reinforces and supports that core belief. So if I'm not really challenging at that core belief level to feel good enough, important, and valued, I am going to constantly gravitate for the more unhealthy coping strategies. What we often see is people who struggling with alcohol have that core belief not good enough. They stop drinking, but then they start gambling, or they go more to anger. So it's just switching from one unhealthy coping strategy to another, challenging at that core belief level where you're believing in yourself more, you believe more in your value, in your worth, you believe you are good enough. Now you're going to be drawn to more healthy coping strategies that reinforce that, like going for a run, doing some journaling, listening to music, playing a board game with your family, driving for an extra 5 minutes in your vehicle before you get home, and just doing some deep breathing so you're ready to feel connected when you get into your home. those reinforce and support good enough, important, and valued. So they're going to look very different as healthy versus unhealthy coping strategies.
So we've spoken a lot about the first step, which sounds like it's awareness, is what you're saying, right? So become more aware of what your unconscious mind, I guess, is doing, is the way you could put it. Now, is that the solution to the puzzle, or is there a step 2?
Oh, there's like 1,000 steps because we go in little tiny steps, right?
Let's
But it
go
is an
through them.
important puzzle, right? It's almost like the awareness is actually putting a table out to do the puzzle on. So we haven't even really started to put the pieces of the puzzle yet, right? Then it's figuring out all those pieces. Why do I do what I do? Where does this come from, right? So if I have anger, why do I have anger? What do I get out of it? Everything we do for a reason. A lot of people say, well, I don't get anything out of anger. Not true. If you didn't get anything out of it, you wouldn't do it. When you get angry, a couple things happen. One is people back off and leave you alone. So if you're feeling anxious, you're feeling overwhelmed, you get angry, people back off and leave you alone, that can come down a little bit. But now you also got a bit of a reputation of being angry. So people don't challenge you as much anyways. So people automatically keep their distance because they don't want to have to deal with the anger. So the anger works when you're angry, but it also works when you're not angry because you don't have to deal with them as much. The other piece is when you get angry, you're actually suppressing other emotions. Anger has been a more socially acceptable emotion for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It was a sign of strength and a strength of power, and it was just acceptable. But really, if what we say about anger is, it's not a standalone emotion. If you think about a time in your life where you felt angry and actually looked at other emotions, you're going to feel other emotions. Anger is a coping strategy we use to avoid feeling emotions we don't want to feel. So if I'm feeling unheard, lonely, powerless, insecure, anxiety, fear, rejection, I don't like to feel those emotions. Switch it to anger. Now all I have to feel is anger. I don't have to feel those other emotions. So we use this thing in the moment to help us cope. But then the anger creates more disconnect, more rejection. We carry more shame and guilt because we got mad at people we're supposed to love and care about. And so ultimately it ends up reinforcing and supporting not good enough, not important, not valued. And the cycle just keeps on continuing.
Yeah, anger was a big one for me. I don't know whether you can speak to this, but I notice that I do this thing when I'm angry, that I try to continually justify why I'm angry, and try to keep myself in that state. And I've kind of got to actually realize that and stop and kind of meditate my way out of it. I guess, I mean, what am I doing there? It sounds like I'm potentially trying to continue to avoid the emotions that I'm covering up with anger.
Right. That's what I would say is likely is going on. The other thing is, anger is about avoiding responsibility for the emotion. Justifying and trying to stay in the anger, justifying is one of the things we use to avoid responsibility. So avoiding responsibility looks like justifying, blaming, excusing, denying, playing the victim, gaslighting, lying, anger. We do those things as a way of avoiding responsibility. When you look at, do you know much about the cycle of anger?
No, please.
Okay, so, the explosion where the anger happens there, yelling could be anything, could be just in my head, angry thoughts, all the way up to big explosive behaviors, but I have the anger. Then the next stage is what we call the honeymoon stage. So this is I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get angry. I'm going to work on it. I don't want to do it again. In most cases, it is genuine. People don't want to have that anger. Sometimes people just do it out of lip service to kind of keep the peace, but most times it is genuine. This is what keeps the cycle going because it gives people living in the cycle a sense of hope. Maybe it's not going to happen again. Maybe it's going to be different this time, so they choose to stay in it. But then life happens. And with everything that we go through in our life, it creates emotion. Remember, I'm already carrying a ton of emotion from all my decades of life. But now little things like I forgot to turn put the clothes from the wash into the dryer creates emotion. I can't find my keys in the morning creates emotion. I forget to pack a lunch creates emotion. Furnace breaks down. I got to pay for a new furnace or a repairman to come in creates emotion. So all these little things create emotion, and that emotion gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there's some sort of a trigger so we can explode again. And many of the families I work with, they really focus on let's get rid of the triggers. The trigger isn't what is feeding the cycle. It's this buildup of emotion. And we know that because the triggers often have happened many times before and never caused an explosion. So why are they causing one now? It's not because of the trigger. It's because I'm full up with emotion. I'm looking for an excuse, which is really what a trigger is, to now get angry again. So I get angry, I explode, the emotion goes up, but then it all falls right back down on top of me. But now I got to carry more emotion because I've just damaged this relationship in getting angry. And the cycle all starts over again.
I was at a productivity speech or speaker yesterday, and their whole thing was about getting in the zone, right? And they spoke about trying to get it in the zone. Let's say after you get a parking ticket, and I took a bit of an issue with the way they dealt with it. Right? They said when you get a parking ticket, you should say thank you for giving me the parking ticket, right? To fix your emotional state. That feels like numbing to me, right? It feels like the way. Yeah, okay, good. So it wasn't just me. I mean, it feels like the way you should deal with a situation like that would be to.
And I think we see that in society all over. Numb, 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 numb. Right, for sure.
Yeah.
What I recommend is, in my book, I have a list of emotions. On my website, I have a list of emotions. Google emotions. Make a list. I tell my clients, print off 5, 10, 15 copies and put them all over your house. Put one in one in your den, one in your vehicle, one in your kitchen, one in the bathroom. And when you're feeling something, pull out the emotion list and read through it. The emotions you are feeling will become very obvious as you're reading that page. So I get a speeding ticket, I pull out my emotions list that's in the console of my vehicle, and I read through the emotions that I'm feeling. Even just reading them for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, I'm now acknowledging and letting that emotion out. I can now go and get in the zone because I've dealt with the emotion that are connected to it. I haven't even paid the ticket yet. Ticket's still there, but I've dealt with and sorted through that emotion. I've given myself a little bit of an opportunity to feel some of that emotion, let it out. Now I can be more able to get into the zone.
Okay, so I want to shift into anxiety. How does the core belief, how's that linked to anxiety, and how do you get yourself into, I guess, daily anxiety loops based on that?
Yeah, so anxiety is a direct symptom of that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. So a lot of people talk about anxiety being about the trigger. I have anxiety of public speaking. Well, if that was true and it was about public speaking, then every single person on the face of the earth would have anxiety of public speaking. Not everyone does. So anxiety isn't about the trigger. Anxiety is about my belief in my ability to handle the trigger. So if I believe I can handle public speaking, I'm not going to have anxiety. If I believe I can't handle public speaking, I am going to have anxiety. So if my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm going to doubt in myself more. I'm not going to believe in myself as much that I can handle things, and therefore I am going to have more anxiety.
So let's stay in the public speaking space, right? So I have been wanting to do more public speaking. I have a lot of anxiety about public speaking. Is it a case of faking it till I make it? I mean, how do I fix that belief that I don't think I'm capable or good enough of doing public speaking?
So one of the big strategies that we use is, anxiety is lack of confidence, not believing in myself I can handle it. So what happens if I make a plan? I'm going to feel more confident, right? So what I would do is I would sit down with you and say, okay, well, what is it about public speaking that you're scared of? Are you scared of judgment? Are you scared of making a mistake? Are you scared of tripping going up the stage? What are the thoughts that are actually creating the anxiety? Because that's how anxiety works. That's how all emotions work. We have a thought, creates a chemical reaction that we then feel physiologically in our body. So the better I understand the thoughts that are creating the emotion, the more I'm going to be able to manage those emotions. So I would, let's say you say I'm scared of tripping up the stage, falling on stage or whatever it might be.
It's a fear of judgment. It's a fear of judgment of looking stupid.
Okay. So fear of judgment of looking stupid. So we would actually make a plan of, so what if you do screw up and you look really stupid? What would you do?
Yeah, you just get over it. I mean, and I want to go back to the parking ticket, right? So my solution to the parking ticket was zoom out and look at realistically how much does that affect your life, right? Is the emotion of anger serving you? No. Is the $80 ticket, are you going to lose your house? No. It's not a big deal, right? So it's about logically understanding the actual impact rather than the quick impact that you've decided that it is based on. Does that kind of resonate? So it's more like really inspecting it logically rather than just emotionally reacting.
Right, for sure. And so, often things like a parking ticket makes us deviate from our plan, right? So I've got to get into the building. I've got to get this done. I've got this meeting. I've got this. I've got this. I got this. I got this. Now I got to deal with a parking ticket. Now now my routine is messed up, and that causes emotion. And so now the parking ticket becomes a big deal, where bottom line, I would ask myself, well, did I deserve a parking ticket? I parked in a zone that I'm not supposed to park in. There's a sign right there that says parking, no parking from this time to this time. I should pay the parking ticket. Move on. Right? And so we have to, I agree with what you're saying. In the big scheme of things, an $80 parking ticket for the vast majority of people is not really that big of a deal. So it's putting it in perspective, but also taking ownership for it. If I park somewhere I shouldn't have parked, natural consequences, I might get a parking ticket. Own that, take responsibility for it. It's easier to move on and sort through it for sure.
So I wanted to ask you about your take on how I see something, right? So I used to be obsessed with wanting a Rolex, right? I used to think that when I could afford and when I could buy a Rolex, I would be happy. And now I just see that side of myself and think, that part, or that's coming from, I guess, a broken place of you, right? And that's something you need to work on and fix. And then I extrapolate that to people like, let's say Elon Musk, all right, or Bill Gates. Are they just extremely broken people? I know that's a hard question to answer, but do you get what I'm getting at there? I mean, do they have would they potentially have deep core beliefs of not being good enough and needing to prove themselves to the world? Is that an extreme version of what we're trying to solve here?
I think when we're looking at people that are really more the extreme, we often do see more kind of significant conditions like ADHD. ADHD people are often very driven. They just got to keep going, going, going. People have obsessive compulsive disorder. They often need to keep going, 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 going. People with the core belief, not good enough. They're constantly trying to prove themselves. So, it's hard. I don't think we can put everyone in one pool and say this is true for everyone. I think it's looking at even what they're doing with it, right? So if I've got someone who's got millions of dollars, but they're donating and they're building things for the community and they're giving back to the community, we could look at that and say, well, they're really healthy because they're giving back to the community. Well, are they? Or are they just doing that to prove then they're good enough? Because now everyone's going to say you're so great to the community. We don't know, because we don't know what's going on in people's heads. So unfortunately, sadly, there are a lot of really struggling people out there. And so there are a lot of people who are making these choices to really try to reinforce and support that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. But success, feeling like you are good enough, important, and valued, can look similar-ish, but there often is a bit more of a balance to it. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not millionaires who feel good enough, important, and valued. But again, there's a bit of a balance there. You can often tell within, a conversation, usually within even an hour of a conversation, of where a person is kind of coming from, how much they're needing to prove they're good enough, important, and valued. I was in the doctor's office yesterday, and this lady was sitting next to me talking to other guy, really loud voice, telling everybody her story about all these things that she's accomplished and all her hardships and how wonderful she is. Not good enough, not important, not valued. She's got to tell everybody about it, right? So there's little kind of things that as a counselor, I'm very attuned to and very aware of. But I think even for the lay person, you can usually kind of pick things out after a few conversations of, who is struggling more with that core belief, and to varying degrees, because they are varying degrees that those core beliefs can come into. Again, not a switch. It's lots of variations of what that can look like.
Okay. So I want to talk more about the relationship between anxiety and confidence and how that plays out on a regular basis.
Right. So again, anxiety is a reflection of that core belief, not good enough, not going to feel very confident in yourself. So one of the really strong strategies is make a plan. So we look at those kind of scenarios, like what if, I'm judged? What if I make a fool of myself? So what would you do? How would you handle it? I'd revamp my speech for next time. I would maybe start with a smaller audience next time. I'd practice a bunch on my own so that I feel more confident next time. We brainstorm through it. We often end up creating these anxious thoughts over and over and over and over in our head. And first of all, vast majority of them don't ever really happen. And the second one is, even if they did, we'd handle it. May not be graceful, may not be fun, but we would handle it. We don't give ourselves enough credit for what we've already been through and really what we're capable of handling. So the better we get at challenging ourselves at that level, the more we're building that core belief, good enough, important, and valued, the more confident we're feeling in handling things, the less anxiety we're going to have.
Great. So I did just want to talk about boundaries as well. So are boundaries always healthy, or can they sometimes be a symptom of something else?
Boundaries are extremely challenging. It frustrates me when I hear, counselors and different kinds of things say, oh, you need to put a boundary in place. It's not that easy. A boundary comes from that core belief. If I believe I'm not good enough, not important, not valued, I don't believe I have a voice. I don't believe I'm worthy of putting a voice in place. I don't trust in myself that I can make decisions in the moment. To put a boundary in place, I have to believe in myself. I have a right to put a boundary in place. I have to have a voice, and I have to trust in myself that I can figure out what boundary I need to put in as life is happening. That is really, really challenging. Even as I'm working with clients and we're shifting that core belief from not good enough, not important, not valued to good enough, important, and valued, boundaries are kind of one of the end pieces that fall into place. So what we see is people go from one extreme to the other, again, that extreme, where I have boundaries in place. They are super hard. They're very rigid. Don't ever cross them. You're going to pay the price. Always there. To the other extreme of I don't really have any boundaries. I let people walk all over me. I just go with the flow. I never challenge. I never question. Balance in the middle is I believe in myself. I can figure out what I need to do. I can put a boundary in place. If I screw up and put the wrong boundary in place, I can take accountability for it and figure out how to adjust and change that. But that takes an incredible amount of confidence and that core belief, good enough, important, and valued, to be able to trust in yourself in the moment that you can make those decisions. Boundaries are extremely challenging. We don't give them as much credit as they really should have, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and a lot of people want to put that in place without offending anyone, right?
Yep.
Well, I don't want to hurt them. Well, you can't. You can't have a voice and put a boundary in place and never upset anyone else. So
Okay,
that becomes a real challenge.
So we've spoken about awareness. We've spoken about putting plans in place. Once we know we've kind of got this core belief, what are some other steps we can take to I guess relieve it? Is it, should we all just go see a psychologist? I mean, what other things can we do to try to turn this thing around slowly?
Yeah, like the challenging piece is, I only know what I know. So I always think of my job as a counselor is to take a client's perceptions, views, beliefs, and help them expand that so they now see more and understand more, can think through things in a bit of a different perspective. So it is really important to continue to expand that. Now, whether that is through seeing a psychologist or a counselor, talking with friends, having those in-depth, hard, challenging conversations, reading, watching videos, whatever it is, you've got to keep exploring and expanding your knowledge base so you can think outside of what you were thinking outside of. The more you do that, the more you're going to become more aware of so many more things that are there. Then as you become more aware, you challenge them. We want to do that responsibility piece where I'm owning, figuring out what I need to do. How can I challenge it? How can I do it differently? How do I make a plan to address that behavior? And then give myself lots of time to practice before I go on to that next stage.
What's emotional exhaustion?
I think emotional exhaustion is very much connected to emotional suppression. We hold it in to the point that it's too much. We can't cope with it anymore. So it's emotional exhaustion. Emotions aren't really the problem. It's our lack of willingness to feel emotions that is the problem. So if we get better at feeling our emotions, letting them out as they're happening, we've sorted through and dealt with the emotion that we're holding in from years and years and years, we're not going to get emotionally exhausted. It's the holding it in that creates the exhaustion. It takes an incredible amount of work to hold those emotions in.
Fantastic. Sabrina, if anybody wants to find more about what you do, where should they be looking?
So I have a website. It's called trobakholistic.org. I also have a YouTube channel, Sabrina Trobak. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook as well. Those links are all on my website, trobakholistic.org. I have written a book called Not Good Enough, Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety, and it's available on all Amazons as well. On my website, I also have a blog section that's 2 to 4 minute reads about varying pieces of information. And I also have a page that has different podcast interviews that I've done as well.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was nice chatting with you.
You too.